Hey guys, so before we get into today's video, I want to tell you about what may be the most interesting lecture series I have found about the evidence for the claims of the church. It's a channel on YouTube called LDS Truth Claims. Brett McDonald presents 32 lectures covering all of the positive evidence for the church, and also deals with essentially every major objection to the church's truth claims. Brett does this systematically with attorney-like rigor. I actually listened to his entire series over a couple of months while doing the dishes. It really helped me realize that saints often never consider how much positive evidence exists for our claims. I highly suggest this series to all Latter-day Saints. Just search for LDS Truth Claims on YouTube. So I wanted to make this video in order to help people recognize a tactic that you often see online coming from ex-members who are hostile to the church. I recently engaged in over 6 hours of discussion with Bill Reel, one of the most vocal anti-Mormons online. I originally wanted to do a debate with Bill, but Bill was adamant that our interactions should not turn into debates, but rather be conversations where we compare our different perspectives. And honestly, the first 5 hours of conversation went pretty well. Bill would often contradict himself, but for the sake of conversation and in the spirit of avoiding debate, I extended grace and did not push too hard in pinning him down on any of these contradictions. So the conversations went pretty well, with only minimal friction as we explored our different perspectives on fundamental topics like the nature of morality and belief systems. But in our most recent discussion on epistemology, knowledge, and the nature of testimony, Bill suddenly changed the topic from a contrast of our different epistemologies into basically interrogating me on everything from Adamic languages to the origins of Christianity. Instead of a conversation, Bill seemed to have prepared beforehand an ambush with long lists of questions and issues. This is actually a classic debate tactic known as a Gish Gallop.
The Gish Gallop is a debate tactic where you overwhelm your conversation partner with a barrage of half-truths and misleading arguments in rapid succession.
I created 3 documents: Prophets, Infallibility, a record of Mormon leaders, reversals and abandonment of past teaching. So these are all the things, and it's significant. So there are 59 of those. Here's the next one. The Mormon Truth Crisis, examining the deception and obfuscation within Mormonism. These are instances in which church leaders seem to be deceptive, dishonest, lying, or obfuscating an issue. This is going to be much longer, I think. I think this one's around 73. Then I've got the Mormon Paradox. These are a list of inconsistencies that challenge faith.
The Gish Gallop exploits the fact that it's easier and less time-consuming to produce a flurry of lies than it is to refute each of those lies one by one. To an untrained audience, the volume and rapidity of information will make the Gish Galloper seem authoritative.
Does Joseph Smith know the Adamic language? Do you believe the Tower of Babel is a literal story?
Hold on.
Are the stripling warriors real? Do you sense, though, the idea behind apostasy and restoration and translation are all fluid right now and shifting? Do you think Joseph Smith here understands or comprehends how to actually translate the word Mormon? Is it rational that Nephi built a ship with his family, a small group of people in the Arabian Peninsula, and traveled across the ocean? Let me ask you this one. 2,000 young men.
Here, hold on here, Bill.
Let me control the conversation for a moment. I let you talk for a while.
I know, but I want to be able to respond to some of this. You're just.
And even if you refute 99 out of 100 arguments, the Gish Galloper can always point to the one argument you didn't and claim victory.
So I don't even need this slide. You've already acknowledged Joseph Smith, at least in those 2 instances, is claiming to translate, but he's not.
But to a savvy crowd, the tactic is nakedly dishonest. In fact, it's considered so disingenuous that in formal debates, judges limit the number of points a debater can raise to prevent just this problem.
What's really ironic is that Bill explicitly told me he did not want me engaging in gotcha debate tactics like the Gish Gallop. Now don't get me wrong, I am happy to take on hard questions, and in a subsequent video, I will address the ones that he brought up. However, I also know a long list fallacy game when I see it, and here's a little tip for my listeners. trying to answer a barrage of questions or assertions on various complex issues is a fool's errand. The point is to put you on the defense, where they can shoot at you over and over again while you try and dodge all the bullets. It's a conversational power move in which you can't really win. Instead, what is important is to dig deeper, to find out what the fundamental issues are that are at the root of your disagreement. Then you can dive deeper into those specific core differences instead of playing whack-a-mole with a person's laundry list of secondary questions. What you're doing here, and I can see exactly what you're doing, and it's fine. You're saying, look at all these things in Mormonism from an atheistic perspective and how they don't make any sense. Our disagreement is not at the level of Mormonism. It's at the level of basic theism. You see, there are many reasons to doubt. It's easy to load that side of the scale. In 150 years, you can find a list of things that fallible human leaders have got wrong in the church. Educated members are well aware of these issues, and yet we still believe. Is that just because of confirmation bias? Or are there even more reasons to believe that Bill simply is unable to see due to his secular presuppositions? Mormonism specifically is a conversation about Christianity. Christianity is a conversation about theism. And theism is a conversation about the nature of reality. So, Bill, you keep wanting to talk about Mormonism when the roots of our disagreement are far more fundamental. Your issue is not with Mormonism. It's with Christianity and theism, and basic philosophical concepts like truth and morality.
Truth isn't objective. It's all myth. Everything's myth.
And none of it...
The book is myth. It's a tree cut up into pieces with ink on it that we have words and language
I
and
understand.
symbols.
I understand, but the reason you can't see the evidence that I see is because you have closed your eyes to the very things that allow you to see that God exists. You have closed your eyes to the very things that make you a human being, like agency and independent will. Can they choose whether or not to actually have sex with children?
Yes and no.
It's not that there isn't any evidence for God or for Christianity or for the restored gospel. It's that you can't see any of it, and I can't show it to you unless we address what is really at the heart of our disagreements. Bill, we are so far apart, and our differences run so much deeper than the Mormonism conversation. We fundamentally are not even asking the same questions. Of course, a Latter-day Saint worldview seems irrational to you. I get it. But for people to see the rationale that we have, they have to walk through those more fundamental conversations. And that is why I'm trying to draw the conversation there. Calculus seems like madness to someone until they understand the arithmetic and algebra it's based on. It's like you want me to explain calculus without being able to discuss the algebra that it's based on. But we get it. Instead of wanting to engage in those fundamental conversations about the really deep and interesting topics that face all of us as human beings, you want to sling mud at a particular church you feel burned by. What you want to do is put me on the witness stand while you rapid-fire questions about things like if Elder Oaks knew about electroshock therapy at BYU in the 1970s. Honestly, it's lame. Anti-Mormons have been doing that tactic for years, but you are missing the point. I actually agree with your perspective. Using purely secular presuppositions, the restored gospel looks absurd. There's not much for us to even discuss. But Latter-day Saints don't share those presuppositions. And that is my point. And so instead of rehashing the long lists of tired arguments we've all already seen on places like the CES letter and fairmormon.com, we should actually dig deeper into what is really going on. You see, it's only when you are a seeker of the Lord Jesus Christ that you are truly engaged in the Christian conversation. And it is in that conversation that the restored gospel begins to speak. When we say the church is true, we mean that the church is true in relation to Him. Latter-day Saints are seeking Jesus Christ. We are saying that the church leads us into a special relationship with Him in ways that no other church can, despite the failings of our mortal members and leaders. The surprising thing is not that the church has its errors. The surprising thing is its incredible power to change lives, families, and communities. What we see as seekers of Christ is a spiritual power in the church that is practically undeniable, and we see it at work in our lives and the lives of those who embrace the restored gospel. Maybe members of the church are not evaluating our leaders based on their ability to be, nearly flawless in all their judgments, but instead evaluate them based on their ability to help them deepen our connection with the God that we are seeking. The vision of this church, along with our unique doctrines, are incredibly compelling to the earnest seeker of Christ as they experience this special and powerful relationship with Him that comes through our covenants. But all of this evidence is not available to the atheist skeptic. Do you see how people like Bill just can't see what we see once they accept these atheistic presuppositions? Do you see how the real root of the issues between people like me and Bill are far more fundamental? Sure, he can point to issues, and perhaps he'll even point to legitimate issues. But these issues become much smaller, secondary issues and questions that simply are not powerful enough to pull us away from the primary questions and issues that we find addressed powerfully by our theism and Christianity. Now, Bill, I do want to continue our interactions, and I think we can both agree that balance in these formats is needed, so we each get equal time and both have to answer specific questions related to a specific topic that we're discussing. Therefore, I think we should continue our engagements, but in a more structured format, so that neither of us end up on the witness stand for an hour being interrogated by the other. So what I would like to propose is that we select a specific topic or question for our engagement based around the fundamental disagreements that we have. Then, when we go live, we will each have 10 minutes to make an uninterrupted opening statement. We then will have 10 minutes to offer our uninterrupted rebuttals to those opening statements. We then will each have 10 minutes to cross-examine the other person and have the chance to ask those hard questions. And finally, we each will have 10 minutes to make a closing statement. This balanced format will allow each of us to have an equal chance to make our arguments, offer responses, and ask each other the hard questions related to a specific topic. Perhaps the first topic we can go into is the root of many of our disagreements, and we can engage on the question of, is it likely that God exists? However, if you really want to discuss Mormonism in particular, and you are willing to grant the premises of theism and Christianity, we can engage over the subject of which Christian worldview aligns best with the biblical Jesus. Or, did the Jesus of the Bible form a church? Or, is the Bible a reliable source for understanding Jesus? Or, since you have an entire channel dedicated to the proposition that the church is harmful, maybe we can engage on that question. Is the church harmful? Anyway, I hope we can continue our interactions. With this balanced format, we can ensure that we each have an equal opportunity to make our points without us talking over each other or getting lost in the weeds of every possible secondary question. My hope is that this type of engagement will allow us to effectively present our perspectives on the fundamental issues that give rise to our very different worldviews and the different worldviews of those who watch. I look forward to hearing from you. So do you enjoy the content here on Thoughtful Faith? If so, be sure to hit the notification bell. This ensures that our new videos show up on your feed. Also, be sure to check out our Facebook group called Thoughtful Saints, where myself and others discuss the sorts of topics found on this channel. And lastly, if you think other people would benefit from this video, please be sure to share it.